Hello, my name is Kieran, and today we're going to be reviewing TellarisHB's School of Arcane Wizard. Let's start our journey through this subclass with the intro text. You focus your study on magic that creates powerful elemental effects such as bitter cold, searing flame, rolling thunder, crackling lightning, and burning acid. Some evokers find employment in military forces, serving as artillery to blast enemies from afar. Others use their spectacular power to protect the weak, while some seek their own gain as bandits, adventurers, or aspiring tyrants. Now that we have a better understanding of what the flavor of this class is about, let's get on to the first feature, Arcane Savant. When you select this school as second level, you learn how to manipulate magic in its raw primordial form. Whenever you cast a spell that deals damage, you could substitute the damage type for force as you conjure primeval arcane power that manifests as pure energy. Now before I continue, I've got a couple of notes. For those of you who don't know, there are 13 different damage types. Now I won't go into each specific one, but just know that out of all the monsters in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, and the Player's Handbook, there are no monsters that resist force damage, and there's only one monster that is immune to force damage. Now even though it's the least resisted type in the game, I don't think it'll ruin the overall balance. And the reason why I say that is because of Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast is a spell that deals 1d10 force damage on hit, and it's known for being the Warlock's bread and butter. Now, because the Warlock is consistently dealing out force damage, and sometimes it can pack quite a punch with the Agonizing Blast, I don't think it's a stretch to say that turning all your damage to force will break the game. But there's two caveats to this. First, that DM psychology wise, it might feel unpleasant to get attacked with force damage. It's a different feeling when you're getting attacked with an 8d6 fireball than an 8d6 ball of force. Second, that I think that this feature, in combination with the next benefit, is what makes this first feature really strong. Additionally, you can now use your Arcane Recovery feature up to twice before needing to finish a long rest. For context, Arcane Recovery allows you, once per day after you finish a short rest, to recover a spell slot to have a combined level that is equal to or less than half your wizard level rounded up. And none of those slots can be 6th level or higher. Now that's a whole jumble of words, but an example that the PHB gives us is that if you're a 4th level wizard, you can recover up to 2 levels worth of spell slots. You can recover either a 2nd level spell slot or 2 1st level spell slots. So by baseline, you could recover 2 1st level spell slots or 1 2nd level spell slot at level 4. But by getting another Arcane Recovery, you'd be able to recover 4 1st level spell slots and 2 2nd level spell slots. I think this is a bit strong because you get a lot more spell slots from this feature, and if your group is running, 1 combat per game, maybe the full effect of this feature won't be as emphasized. But if you're running multiple combats per game, this will definitely show up when you're outpacing all the other full casters. Overall, I think that this first subclass feature is just too strong. I don't understand the flavor reasoning behind changing the damage type to force or getting another Arcane Recovery, because the flavor at the text at the beginning, it focuses on the different elemental effects. Now this is my own personal suggestion, but if we're fitting into the text more, I would love to see a feature that allowed you to change the damage type between acid, thunder, fire, cold, and lightning, rather than this emphasis on force damage. Next we have the Rune of Power. By 6th level, you can use your action to tap into the mystical ley lines that riddle the very earth beneath you. You conjure a 10-foot radius circle of glowing runes on the ground centered on yourself. The rune lasts for 10 minutes, after which it dissipates, leaving no trace of its prior existence. Now this is all fine and dandy. The only things I have to note is that the circle doesn't move with you, the duration is 10 minutes, and that after it dissipates, it leaves no trace of itself, which I think is a really interesting addition, and I would love to know why you added that specific benefit. But this next part is where it gets really interesting. When you cast a spell while standing on the rune, your spell attack modifier and spell save DC are both increased by 2. Now this is very strong for a 6th level feature, and here's why. First, the +2 spell attack modifier and spell save DC is bonkers, and while I was researching the other wizard subclasses, none of them were this strong. The closest relative I could find was the War Magic Wizard's Durable Magic, which doesn't even touch spell attack modifier and the spell save DC, and it's a 10th level feature. But that's not all. If the spell deals damage, you can reroll a number of damage die equal to your intelligence modifier. In addition to the +2 spell attack modifier and the spell save DC, we also have the ability to reroll a number of damage die equal to your intelligence modifier. But what does this look like in practice? Let me show you. Let's just say I want to cast Fireball. That's 8d6 fire damage or force damage if we're using this subclass. We rolled 1 6, 1 5, 2 4s, 1 3, 1 2, and 2 1s. Assuming we have an intelligence modifier of 3, we could then choose to reroll the lowest 3. In this case, it's our 2 1s and singular 2. And with that, we get 1 4 and 2 2s, netting us a +4 to our damage. And you may think this is a one-off thing, that this +4 is a statistical outlier, that this net 4 is an average, and that I'm crazy. But no, I did the calculations, I did the math, and being able to reroll your damage gets you an average increase of +3. But to be honest with you, this is wrong. The average increase changes depending on both the amount and the type of die. But also, this feature only says reroll, not whether or not you can take the higher die. This will lead to a small increase in the overall total, especially because you get to choose which die you're rerolling, and most of the time people are going to be choosing the lowest numbers to reroll, but it'll likely just make your damage either average or a smidge above average. Either or, it's an interesting choice to word it as a flat reroll rather than taking the higher damage roll. It definitely makes the benefit weaker, but also just weirder to use. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it's definitely something to know. We end this feature off by being able to use this feature twice, regaining the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. This is in line with some of the other wizard features, so in general it's good, but the benefits when compared to the rest of the wizards at 6th level, this feature is definitely stronger. Now, personal opinion time, but I really like the idea of the re-rolling the damage. I think it's the right area for a 6th level feature. I'd have to do a bit more math, but I think that just having the re-roll by itself as a passive could be a very interesting route to pursue. Also, before I move on to the next feature, I have a thematical gripe. We're getting farther and farther away from the elemental flavoring from earlier and focusing a lot more on the artillery power, which is fine. I just would want the introduction text to connect with the class mechanics more. For 10th level, we have Arcane Echoes. Starting at 10th level, whenever you cast a spell on your turn using a spell slot, you can, as a bonus action on that same turn, create a number of magic missiles and direct them at any number of creatures within 120 feet. Multiple missiles can be sent to a single target, and they all hit simultaneously, dealing 1d4 plus 1 force damage. The number of missiles you create is equal to the level of the spell slot used for the spell. Now, the first thing I notice here is the wording. You could add in the number of missiles you create into the text instead of adding it as an extra sentence. For example, starting at 10th level, whenever you cast a spell on your turn using a spell slot, you can, as a bonus action on that same turn, create a number of magic missiles equal to the level of your spell slot used and direct them at any number of creatures within 120 feet. Multiple missiles can be sent into a single target and they all hit simultaneously, dealing 1d4 plus 1 force damage. Now the second thing I notice, and the most appalling thing I notice, is the amount of free damage. We get this feature at 10th level, where we get 4 first level spell slots, 3 second level spell slots, 3 third level spell slots, 3 fourth level spell slots, and 2 5th level spell slots. I did the math, and you know how much damage that is? It's 143.5 damage on average. You give 143.5 unmissable 120 foot range damage per long rest, and this isn't even accounting for arcane recovery. Point blank, this is broken. Even though it's parceled out over time because you can only cast 1 spell per turn, the fact that you can even get a total of 143.5 free unmissable damage per long rest is insane. The best damage comparison I could find was the Graviturgy's Wizard's Violent Attraction, which reads, when another creature that you could see within 60 feet of you hits with a weapon attack, you can use your reaction to increase the attack's velocity, causing the attack's target to take an extra 1d10 of the weapon's damage type. Alternatively, if a creature within 60 feet of you takes damage from a fall, you can use your reaction to increase the fall's damage by 2d10. That's 1d10 damage under specific circumstances, not 143.5 free damage. This feature's gotta go. I don't know what would replace it, to be honest with you, but the damage is just far too high for it to be in the class. I also don't think the concept of getting an extra 1d4 plus 1 per spell level of damage can work either, but I do enjoy the flavoring of the force damage in the magic missiles. And last but not least, we've got the Leyline Seal. At 14th level, you can use your action to unleash a vast torrent of primordial magic in a 200 foot long, 20 foot wide line originating from you. All creatures and objects in the area are automatically stopped in time for 1 turn. Creatures and objects that are stopped in time cannot act in any way, do not perceive their surroundings, and have all their motion suspended. For instance, an object stopped during a free fall will cease to move, but will commence with its velocity conserved once the stop ends. Stopped creatures or objects can also not be interacted with in any meaningful way. They cannot be moved, damaged, or affected with any effects or conditions. Any ongoing effects are suspended along with their durations while the stop is in effect. On the following turn, you can use your action to prolong the stop for 1 additional round. However, when doing so, you cannot move or use any bonus actions on the turn that you do. Once you use this feature, you cannot do so again until you finish a long rest. My brother in Christ, this is time stop but in a different font. I have a couple of gripes about this, and the 2 main ones are, 1, that it's perpetual. You could do this forever, which is just no bueno. No feature in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition allows for a perpetual time stop. My second gripe is that this is even farther away flavoring wise than the other features. We're getting into chronomancy here, and I'm really confused because we went from elemental effects to force damage to stopping time. Now, I will admit, I do not know World of Warcraft, and perhaps it's because of the fact that I'm not understanding the flavoring that comes with this particular mage. However, as someone with no experience, I am a bit lost. For overall feedback, there's a thematic dissonance between the class flavoring and the class mechanics. Levels 2, 6, and 10 all work together thematically because they provide a feeling of a strong arcane blaster that deals out force damage from a far distance away. However, level 14 doesn't provide that same feeling of an arcane blaster. It switches awkwardly into chromomancy at the 14th level. In addition, a lot of features here I think work, but combined together become incredibly strong. For example, the +2 spell save DC and spellcasting modifier with the rerolling damage, the swapping to force, and the 2 arcane recoveries. In general, the class is incredibly strong, and it needs some modifications in the balancing department. I think it also could use some tweaks into the thematic design overall, but I think it's an interesting class that, when executed right, could be very fun to play. On the tier list, I put it at a broken, but definitely above the Path of Fury Barbarian. That being said, thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe for more, and if you want your homebrew reviewed, comment down below and I'll take a gander. Thank you for watching.